Rod Coronado is a well-known Native American activist who participated in direct actions with the Earth Liberation Front and Animal Liberation Front during the 1990s. He spent 4.5 years in federal prison after he was convicted of aiding and abetting arson at a Michigan State University research facility. The fire destroyed years of data that was used to benefit the fur industry.
We're here to talk about Rod Coronado. Rod Coronado was a member of Sea Shepherd and also active with Earth First, active with the Animal Liberation Front. Sort of a lifelong radical activist.
Hi, and welcome back to Animal Liberation TV. So, the next chapter in Memories of Freedom by the Western Wildlife Unit of the Animal Liberation Front. So, this is the North American ALF. We're continuing with this story. I've been looking forward to doing this chapter because this is chapter 4, ALF. This is the ALF. The youth take charge. Come on. Okay. In the late April evening of a warm California night, ALF warriors jumped a chain-link fence on the campus of the University of California at Davis and changed the face of the animal rights movement in America forever. The next morning, a state-of-the-art animal diagnostic research laboratory would be a smouldering ruin, the victim of an arson attack that left no injuries and $3 million in damage. Spectacular. It would be over a year before the lab would recover from the attack and open its doors. Never before had the ALF employed arson in the US, while in Britain it was already an accepted tactic. For the first time in the history of the US animal rights movement, an animal research laboratory was destroyed before it even opened. That's incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. Federal investigators rushed to the scene and suddenly the animal rights movement became the target of the investigation. Oh yeah, that'll do it alright though, won't it? Animal rights activists unfamiliar with the accomplishment of something in one night that couldn't be achieved with years of legal activism were quick to distance themselves from the UC Davis fire and other ALF type actions and began to condemn the ALF. Same happened here in the UK in the 80s. For many in the animal rights movement, the struggle was about reforming cruel practices, not abolishing the institutions which perpetuate commercial animal exploitation. The UC Davis fire was the product of much discussion amongst the strategists of the ALF. Would the ALF maintain its Robin Hood persona, whisking animals to freedom with much public support, or would they launch a campaign of economic sabotage intent on costing animal abusers millions in expensive security improvements and increased insurance premiums, as well as maximum property destruction? Already, the ALF was known to launch small smash attacks against fur shops and fast food eateries, breaking windows with bricks and slingshots, and sloganing with signature blood red spray paint. The decision was a strategic one. Public support was nice, but alone it had rarely saved animals' lives. All those letters to Washington, D.C. waste paper baskets were proof of this. The industries of earth destruction and animal abuse were firmly favoured by the US political structure, and never would politicians enact and enforce laws that cost them the financial support of big business that put them in office. It's the same over here. It's the same in all nations, you know. The campaign of maximum destruction, not minimum damage, to the equipment of animal abusers had begun, and with it came a new element of the animal rights movement never before seen in the US. Amazing, amazing. This is why the ALF isn't an organisation. There's no membership or structure or leadership or anything. There's some guidelines for people to follow, but the ALF is just people who happen to do stuff at any one time. So the ALF is an idea, and the idea that it spread from the UK to the US in a similar manner, style of actions, is incredible to read. It's so inspiring for me now, because I'm just one tiny little part of the animal liberation movement myself. Tens of thousands of people have been involved, and I'm proud mostly of other people's efforts, because I've only done a tiny bit of stuff myself. I'm just really proud of all the other people that feel strongly enough to do things on behalf of animals, and then, because we're all mocked for it, aren't we? I'm so proud. It's amazing to think it's spread over there. Often ALF actions were signed with the trademark ALF in red paint, but in Davis the circle A anarchy symbol was affixed to the A of the ALF signature. To those who bothered to look beneath the carefully controlled media coverage of ALF actions, this was a sign that the ALF was no longer simply an animal group, but one that also was opposed to the entire system which perpetuated animal abuse. Yes, which is what I've been talking about quite a bit more recently on this channel. Press releases following ALF actions after 1987 often drew connections to animal abuse and environmental destruction and human liberation. The anarchistic influence in the ALF was also proof that the ALF saw through the facade of the First World to the underlying corruption of the US political process. Good stuff. The ALF no longer was only opposed to society's mistreatment of animals, but also the institutions that thrived on human abuse and control, environmental degradation, and the impact first world business practices had on members of poverty-stricken indigenous peoples the world over, who provided America with a fat of their land. The lines between animal rights and animal liberation had become clearly drawn. No longer would the ALF only represent the predominantly upper middle class majority who most represented the animal rights movement. ALF actions began to reflect the frustration and oppression felt by most members of American citizens who, like the animals, were victimised by big business first and everything else last. Yeah, because I hate to say, even though people think they've got free will to buy things, live off a diet of things like McDonald's and stuff, there's an argument that millions of people en masse who buy McDonald's, they're actually the victims of the abusive system itself. They're the victims of cheap food, processed food, the victims of advertising, the victim of sort of belonging, the culture of burger eating. So they're all victims, and McDonald's food is it's not food, is it? It's just utter shit, And yeah, I'm, like I've said before, I'm old school. There's no way you're going to see me at McDonald's eating a McPlant. Anyway, so you could argue that everyone is the victim of something like that, Let's have a look. Where's this? ALF factions began to reflect the frustration and oppression felt by various members of the American... Oh, hang on. In less than 2 months of the US Davis fire, the Western Wildlife Unit of the ALF was formed to deal specifically with the war on America's wildlife. Their first action occurred on Memorial Day 1987, wow, when over 200 wild horses were released into their homeland range of northeastern California, where they were being removed to make room for cattle grazing operations. Oh dear. Already in the West, livestock... Already in the West, livestock comprised of over 70% of available grazing land, and wild horses a meagre 2%. Yet they were seen as competition with the politically powerful cattlemen's lobby. In a policy supported by many animal welfare groups, the horses are rounded up and slated for adoption, never again to roam free on America's landscape as they have done for over 400 years. Oh, God. There's so much sadness in this world, isn't it? Jesus Christ. But that's what makes us animal liberationists. Me, you, whoever's watching this, that's what makes us. important to the animals because we care. Our sadness turns into anger, which turns into action, which turns into success, which turns into victory, which turns into stopping this stuff happening. So we're actually doing our best to try and stop this sadness, aren't we? All of us together. Immediately following the wild horse liberation, the Western Wildlife Unit visited UC Davis, this time releasing 3 turkey vultures used in poison studies for the deadly tool of the US Department of Agriculture Animal Damage Control Programs. Compound 1080, a poison most frequently used to kill small mammals and predators living on lands grazed by livestock. In 1987 ended with the rescue of 4 beagles used in studies of the effects of air pollution from the University of California at Irvine by the ALF. Such research was the epitome of not only our treatment of animals, but also of our irresponsibility in protecting our environment. And there's an ALF photo there from one of their raids. ALF strikes again. I'm guessing the graffiti says, "Go on, get in. Well done, you lot." But this is a classic one, isn't it? 4 beagles being used for air pollution studies at the University of California. Well, unless you've been living on planet Venus, everyone in the world knows that Los Angeles has got really terrible smog and air traffic pollution problems. Why do they need to study the effects on dogs when millions of people have got asthmas and cancers from that air pollution? There's absolutely no reason to look at what happens to dogs in an artificially created version when you've got millions of humans in that city suffering from respiratory illnesses. This is the point. This is the thing about vivisection. It's always just like absolutely nonsensical. Oh yeah, there's that graffiti. I think another one of the photos. Something like that. Whoops. ALF strikes again. Getting some animals out of the cages, is it? What time are we on? Right, I'm just going to do this other half a page here, and then we'll do the rest of the chapter next time, because I like to keep the episode short if possible. The bridge between animal abuse and environmental destruction was beginning to cross the gap that previously existed between radical environmentalists and animal liberationists. Apparently, it was not a one-way effort. In 1988, an Earth First offshoot claimed responsibility for an attempted firebombing of the Californian Cattlemen's Association's offices in Sacramento and the near total destruction of a livestock auction yard in nearby Dixon. Woo-hoo-hoo. Don't do it, kids. Don't do that. Don't do it. In 1988, there were more ALF actions and instances of Earth First inspired monkey wrenching than in any previous year recorded in the US. Oh, it's a good year then, 1988. The struggle continued with lab raids across the country, culminating in the largest raid on an animal research laboratory in the United States. In April 1989, the ALF simultaneously broke into 4 separate animal research labs and offices at the University of Arizona in Tucson, destroying one laboratory with fire, causing irreparable damage to computer records at animal research offices with fire in a separate administrative office, as well as rescuing 1,200 mice, rats, rabbits, guinea pigs and frogs from the vivisection labs on campus. That is well done to those people. Wow, that was 4 different things on the one night. That was really good. Wow. 1989 ended with not only a full-force investigation of animal rights groups by federal authorities, that's hardly surprising, is it, after all that, but a sting operation against Earth First that netted 4 activists attempting to topple power lines in the Arizona desert. Poor sods. The sting revealed that one of the monkey wrenchers was actually an FBI agent who had infiltrated the Warrior Circle for 2 years. Spy cops. Jesus. So I'm going to read the rest of that chapter out next time. Like I said, keep these episodes fairly bite-sized. So hope you're enjoying this story. I'm loving the development and the explanation of what they got up to and how the movement grew and their direct action growth. So I hope you are too. Look after yourselves and take care.